raft of fresh loans worth more than $740 million. For the first time in Ghana history, our debt is above 100% to GDP. The government has, in the last few weeks, been touring the world asking Western countries, mainly in Europe and America, to intervene to assist Ghana deal with a crippling debt crisis. In the latest of such appeals, President Akufo-Addo, in the last 24 hours, has been appealing to Japan to assist.
We count on the support of Japan, an influential member of the International Monetary Fund, in helping Ghana to reach a good agreement with the fund.
Well, today, Ghana's debt just got even deeper, with Parliament approving another raft of fresh loans worth more than $740 million. The NDC minority members opposed the loans and demanded a debt ceiling. Here is a former minority leader, Haruna Drisu.
The Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, represented by its 275 elected MPs, even at this age and time of unprecedented economic difficulty arising out of excessive borrowing, which comes at cost to the Ghanaian taxpayer, the Parliament of Ghana is being called upon to approve a loan amount of $150 million. Mr. Speaker, today, Ghana is not only debt distress. We are currently between 98 to 103% of debt to GDP ratio, of borrowing to the level of 576 billion to 600 billion Ghana cedis. That this House is not minded that there must be a stop to borrowing. There must be. And this House must provide that leadership for the Ghanaian people. We must say no to further borrowing by Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and by Ken Ofori-Atta. This House must stand strong in saying that we will not approve of any additional borrowing. Whether it's concessionary is what you have wheeled the economy to the nadir of failure, and therefore coming to ask for additional borrowing, that the Parliament of Ghana is comfortable to grant approval for a loan when you have borrowed to over close to 100% of GDP. Where does this happen in the world? This House, I have said it before, if the majority leader will recall, even this Parliament must make sure that as a rule of thumb into the future, not just this administration, governments will come and go, presidents will come and go, there must be a debt ceiling in this country.
Well, the carrying minority leader, Dr. Kese Latofo-Singh, who has been incensed about the number of loan agreements that keep coming to the House, says all the loan agreements that have come before the House are simply not worthy of approvals, and at least some of them or all of them could have been deferred till after the crisis has been resolved.
Speaker, I do not believe that now is the time for us to take additional loans. Speaker, as we speak, our country is simply insolvent. Speaker, we have defaulted in the repayment of our external debt. We have also defaulted in the repayment of our domestic debt. Aside that, just last week, one of the rating agencies that Ghana government has contracted has downgraded Ghana to restrictive default. Speaker, simply put, we are in a deep hole. Speaker, what I know is that when you are in a hole, the first thing you do is to stop digging. But unfortunately, this government will not stop digging. Speaker, sadly, we are being called upon to borrow an amount of $150 million. But largely, this amount is not going to where we can be able to drive productivity. Speaker, food security is important to all of us. And we will support any loan that is geared towards food security in a way that the farmer will benefit. But unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, this money is not going to the farmer. Largely, this amount is staying in the offices. Mr. Speaker, the time has come for us to review the loans that the World Bank grants. Mr. Speaker, oftentimes, the World Bank grants loans to countries where it is heavily concentrated on consultancy. Mr. Speaker, I have my big concern with this matter.
take it to Parliament shortly, but I want to give you some context with the loan situation that we currently have on our hands. My colleague Kofi AJ joins me in the studio with details of this, and we've been tracking our debt situation, which really is why we are where we are right now. What's the latest on where we stand when it comes to our debt?
Well, Evan, so we can confidently report that Ghana's debt stock has now crossed half a trillion Ghana cedis. Now, most of the agreements we sign in Parliament are external loans. And according to the finance minister, Ghana's external debt stock, as at the end of this last year, was around $30.5 billion. It is more than 60% of the country's GDP. Now, we also know that most of the external loans agreements were signed in 2020.
So this 60% is just external loans?
External loans, 20% of GDP. So in 2018, for instance, Evans, we signed 17 external loans agreements. And in 2019, we signed 20, and then it rose sharply to 62 in 2020. And then in 2021, it declined to 28, and there's no update on the number of loans we signed in 2022. But we've added about $3 billion to our external debt portfolio, and the IMF is projecting that we may hit 99% of GDP by the end of this year.
In fact, if you read the Fitch downgrade, the report that accompanied it last week, they had mentioned that even with the domestic debt exchange program that we've done, we've only achieved a 1% reduction in our debt to GDP ratio, and it's still above 100%. They say. So this is end of year projection by IMF.
99%.
So what that means is that possibly is factoring in the restructuring that we'll do to our external debt as well.
Both external and domestic.
In other words, Fitch is right to suggest that this restructuring, even where it's highly successful on both fronts, the domestic and external fronts, it will only bring us to 99%.
That's terrific,
Wow.
Yeah.
All that.
99% of GDP.
Kofi, thank you very much. So that's the debt situation as we have it, even if we are successful in restructuring all our debt with the domestic now done, as we pursue, as you heard the president say there to the Japanese to assist us, now get some relief, some assurances from the Paris Club, mainly in China as well, and then we'll move on to deal with our creditors, the Eurobond, etc. Let's go to Parliament now, where this has been a major issue today on the floor. Kweku, parliamentary correspondent, is joining me right now with more. Kweku, in spite of the minority objections, all 7 loan agreements have now been approved in the last hour or so. Do we have any more details on these specific loans and why the minority failed to use their numbers to make that count in the process? Hello, Kweku. Okay, we'll try and get...
Hello, Evan.
Yes.
Yes, Evan. So for context sake, Parliament has been on break since the end, and we're simply invited by the Speaker of Parliament, Record actually, to come in to consider some key government business. And then today, when you look at the other paper, there were about 7 key loans and agreements, financing agreements that they had to take through. Let me first run through you the list. First, $60.6 million as additional COVID-19 emergency preparedness and response project. Another $150 million to finance the West Africa Food System Resilience Program, Phase 2. 170 million euros on lending agreement for the establishment of the Development Bank of Ghana. $30 million to finance the medical equipment in response to COVID-19. $160 million to finance the Prime Healthcare Investment Project. Another $150 million to finance the Public Financial Management for Service Delivery Program. And then $200 million to finance the Ghana Digital Acceleration Project. All this were put question today in the House. The minority simply did not have the numbers. Indeed, there was some point when they were complaining that this is the campaign season for them and that it was unfair that they were being recalled to come and consider this. When it got to the time of voting, they just simply did not have the numbers to match the full 137 that had appeared on the majority side.
Mr. Speaker, I'm drawing your attention to a matter of fairness. Mr. Speaker, you recall earlier when the majority side did not have their numbers. They forced you to put the question on hold, members in. Mr. Speaker, I submitting to you to be fair to the minority, to allow us to win our mandate as well. So it's a matter of fairness. So some of them are on the battlefield campaigning. Some of them are on the battlefield campaigning. In fact, 3 of our members have just been called. But I make this point to let you know how unfair this recall is. At a time when members on this side are really fighting for their political survival. It's very important. I need to make that point.
Kweku, apart from the loan titles that the Parliament considered today, do we have any more direct specifics regarding what some of these loans will be used for? That I believe was a major concern of the minority on one particular loan.
Indeed, according to the minority leader, the minority will not be so much opposed to loan agreements which can repay itself when they fall due. But if you look at the number of them, they are for COVID-19. For instance, $60.6 million as shared additional financing for Ghana COVID-19 preparedness. The minority have been asking questions. COVID-19 is long over in Ghana in their estimation. Why are we borrowing more money to fight COVID-19? For instance, there's another $150 million to finance the primary healthcare investment project. The minority say that the details are scanty and that, in fact, they were demanding a memorandum. And that majority leader came in and said the memorandum was all presented to the finance committee to look into all of that. At one point, they were having some concerns about $200 million to finance the Ghana Digital Acceleration Project, which government says is going to boost Ghana's digitalization efforts. They did not have details on that. They had to take the Minister for Owusu to come and offer some explanations as to what that amount of money will be used for.
We need to know the details. All what we are asking for is the use of proceeds, specific use of proceeds for the $200 million United States dollars. Specific use of proceeds for the $200 million United States dollars, Mr. Speaker, so that we'll be able to know that the money that we are contracting, the $200 million loan that we are contracting, is going to A or B. Mr. Speaker, what we have here is just semantics, words describing how the money will be used. But I'm not interested in the words. I'm interested in how the money will be spent. And so the minister, as she speaks, let the minister come back, gives us the details, breakdown of the use of proceeds, so that nobody will speculate on this matter. Mr. Speaker, apart from that, we oppose to this until we get that details. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And I believe this is the loan agreement that had to do with the provision of some digital services.
Yes. $200 million to finance the Ghana Digital Acceleration Project. The Communications Minister, Madam Owusu, had to come in to explain what exactly this amount of money, the loan that was being contracted, will be used for.
When I appeared before the committee, we did notify them that the proposed interventions under Component 1 will produce significant economic and financial gains to both private telecom operators, rural unconnected populations, and the general population. Specifically, they will be expected to generate benefits mainly in the form of additional expansion of the additional customer base and revenue for telecom operators with minimal last-mile investment. Government is putting in the infrastructure which the private sector will leverage on to extend connectivity to the rural areas, to enable them to also be part of the digital revolution that is taking place. Mr. Speaker, the benefits are self-evident, and I'm surprised that the minority leader is questioning the need for us to invest in building the digital infrastructure of our country.
And Kweku, let's return to that demand today by the minority side, demanding that we get a debt ceiling. I wonder what the majority side made of that call that came in originally from Harun Edrisu.
According to our chairman Sabos, who is the majority leader, he's not opposed to the idea in principle, but that there must be more nuance. He says that, for instance, if Parliament states that the debt ceiling is % of GDP, does that mean that if the current government borrows up to 70%, then the next government cannot borrow at all? He wants some form of convergence in terms of the nuances of agreeing to such legislation before Parliament should consider anything of the sort.
My former colleague, the minority leader, was talking about the fact that we should not borrow excessively beyond a certain threshold. I agree with him. And I've argued in this House that, yes, Parliament should make a determination on this. How to actualize it is a difficulty. We cannot just say that we should not exceed a ceiling or a ratio, a debt to GDP ratio of, let's say, 70%. And then we say that a government comes, it borrows up to 70%. The next succeeding government has no space. So they should not be allowed to borrow for development. What's the thinking behind that? If you are saying that let no government over an 8-year period borrow, for instance, not more than 5% of GDP, to me, that would be much more reasonable than saying that we should not exceed a determined threshold. If you say that we should not go beyond 70%, one government comes, and the debt to GDP is 70%, the next succeeding government has no space to borrow for development. Where is that rationalization coming from? So, Mr. Speaker, we should have a much more scientific way of coming to this determination. It should not be arbitrary. It should not be whimsical.
I want to bring in now the director of the Institute for Statistical, Social and Economic Research with the University of Ghana, Professor Peter Quartey, joins us on the telephone line right now. Prof, thanks for your time here on Top Story.
Yeah, good evening to you and to your discerning listeners.
First, what do you make of this call for Ghana to adopt the debt ceiling approach?
Well, I think the rule-based approach sometimes helps so that you avoid discretion as much as possible. If you look at where we are currently, we're going through this painful debt exchange program, and for us to continue to borrow, we have to be certain that whatever money we borrow will enhance productivity, whatever we borrow will generate enough income to repay. Otherwise, we'll be piling on debt. Let's remember, it's debt GDP ratio. When we are talking for these ratios, it's debt, total debt divided by GDP. So if you pile on debt and you don't increase your GDP, your debt GDP ratio would certainly cross the threshold, and repayment becomes a challenge. If you're not careful, we'll be back at another debt restructuring, debt exchange, and all the difficulties that it brings.
And this conversation is happening only because today Parliament was recalled for an emergency sitting to approve 7 new loans. The argument from the minority side is because of where the country is right now, in the grips of an unprecedented debt crisis, all loans should have been placed on hold. Is that an approach that the government should adopt? Put all loans on hold for now?
We cannot do that. Some of the loans are more or less special loans. Some are concessional loans. So if you have an expensive loan and there's a concessional loan that you can use to repay the more expensive loans, why not? But I think this discussion should have started long ago. It shouldn't be now. We should have started the discussion all long ago, have a threshold. If you look at the IMF World Bank debt sustainability report, it gives you a clear threshold, and when you are crossing, your debt is becoming unsustainable. They raise the red flag. We have not listened to good counsel, and I think this is the time to start thinking through this carefully, that we need a threshold. We cannot continue to borrow beyond the threshold. I mean, one can argue that there are other countries like UK, others who debt our GDP is over 100%, but that is UK. If you look at their GDP, it's huge, and they have the resources. We do not have that leverage. We have to always go to the IMF for support. So let's begin the discussion. I'm not saying we should not approve any loan at all, but let's carefully look at the type of loan we are approving. What is it going to be used for? Is it going to enhance productivity? Is Is it going to generate enough resources to repay? What are we using it for? I think we need more details, better particulars, before we approve such loans. So putting in a rule, in my view, is not a bad thing. There are rule-based policies that we operate in. That's why the Bank of Ghana has rules that increasing the policy rates and all that, and many other things. So it is not new to us to have a rule-based approach to some of these issues.
One of the loans in particular came in for some scrutiny, which is the largest that they approved today, $200 million to finance the Ghana Digital Acceleration Project. And the minority's argument is this is one loan government could have at least deferred until you are in a position where you could say you are safely out of this current crisis before you reactivate it for consideration for digital acceleration. Do you agree that that is one of those areas where, because of the current austerity and the crisis, and there's no urgency there, as they've argued, you could have held on to?
I don't have all the details about the loan, but I can say that if we want to go digitalization, we want to enhance revenue mobilization, digitalization is the way to go. We ought to enhance our digital infrastructure so we can raise more revenue, property rates, and many other assemblies, helping the assemblies to raise revenue. So, again, it depends. But I think we need to raise revenue, and therefore the need to contract some of this loan is important. Except that we ought to always look at our ability to repay. If we contract these loans and it will generate resources, it will enhance our GDP, it will grow our national income, so we are able to repay, yeah, that is fine. But if it's not, and a greater proportion of these loans will rather go into consumption or into administration, and only a few will go into actually deploying the needed infrastructure and might not generate the needed resources for repayment, for future repayment, then I have a problem with that.
And on the debt ceiling conversation that came up on the floor today, can a country like Ghana, so heavily dependent on loans, can it survive under a debt ceiling regime such as we see in the U.S.? Even there, it's such a big political hot potato each time it comes up.
Well, we can. I mean, now we say we're going through the debt restructuring, debt exchange, and under the IMF program, if it comes through, we are expected to reduce our debt GDP to about 55%. I mean, we could increase this to about 60-65% and make sure we operate within that range, plus or minus. I don't think we should leave it open, even in banks. If you want to borrow in our usual daily credit or borrowing behavior, you cannot borrow beyond a certain threshold. Your take-home pay has to be at least a certain proportion of your income. So there has to be some responsibility. We have to borrow responsibly. We cannot say we are a developing country and therefore it's free for all. Any money that comes in, we have to accept it. We have to cut our coat according to the size of our cloth. And that is very important. Otherwise, we'll continue to be having this painful debt exchange program. We continue to run to the IMF. What is needed is for us to raise revenue domestically. And I see some efforts on the part of government. GRA is doing its best. But we need to do a bit more so we don't resort to borrowing anytime we need resources. Domestication is important. Raising domestic revenue to the needed threshold. We are raising our revenue GDP ratio is low. It's below the Sub-Saharan African average. Let's raise domestic revenue. And I believe through digitalization and other means, we should be able to reduce our dependence on borrowing.
Prof, thanks very much. That's Professor Peter Quartey, Director of the Institute for Statistical, Social and Economic Research. The top story this hour. In the last couple of hours, Parliament has approved a raft of loans worth more than $740 million amidst the deepest debt crisis in a generation. On the minority side, they've been asking for the imposition of a debt ceiling. You can share your thoughts with me, 055 1111 997. Newsnight in a minute.
Ever visited a shop, picked a whole basket of provisions, toiletries, and very essential things you need, battled a long queue to finally pay, only to be told you can't pay to a merchant number. The way that thing they pay, but with Vodafone Cash, there is no problem. Now on Vodafone Cash, you can pay all merchants on all networks. Easy peasy. And you're straight. And you're direct. And you're sharp. From your Vodafone Cash wallet to any merchant number on other networks. So whether you are buying provisions or fuel, medication or food, whatever the service or need, just pay conveniently from Vodafone Cash to any merchant's number. Simply dial *110# to make payment to merchants on other networks today.
Vodafone.
Wouldn't you prefer an apartment hotel? One that offers the utmost convenience of a boutique hotel while offering the idyllic comfort of your own private home. Oasis Park Residences offers luxury studios, 1, 2 and 3 bedrooms both for short and long-term rental at competitive rates. Our sky swimming pool, gourmet outdoor restaurant, and a fully equipped gym rest on a breathtaking rooftop with panoramic views of the city. Oasis Park Residences, located at Shiashi Tetekwashi, 10 minutes from the international airport, is the ideal place for all your accommodation needs. Why don't you give us a call on 020-4343-009 or visit our website at oasisparkresidences.com to make your reservations. Oasis Park Residences, more than a home.
Good evening and welcome to News Night. In the next 60 minutes, quality of Ghana's vegetative cover declines due to excessive degradation, including illegal mining activities. Tonight, at least 34 of Ghana's forest reserves are now hotbeds for such activities.
What it means is that whilst the total size of the forest is increasing, the quality of the forest is reducing, which means that there are more open spaces. The canopy is reducing.
Also, Lands and Natural Resources Minister says security agencies have been tasked to go after an identified cartel behind such degradation.
The fight against these illegal enterprises and the cartels in our forest reserves will not be an event, but a process. What is important is the commitment to protect and preserve these resources.
We have details of that. Meanwhile, Special Prosecutor Kissie Jabin says he's already investigating the alleged high-level political complexity hampering the fight against the menace, as highlighted in the Professor Kwabena Frimpong Boateng report. Government is meanwhile not backing down in its criticism of the content.
A suggestion that Professor Frimpong Boateng's report is sacrosanct, is scripture, with the greatest of respect to the good old professor and to his report. I don't think that is how we have to look at it.
Also in this edition, High Court declines to rule on the alleged dual identities of Secretary to the National Cathedral Board of Trustees, Reverend Kwesi Boateng, saying the matter is under investigations. Meanwhile, the NP at the centre of the allegations, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, has vowed not to back down in its quest to expose what he says is rot within the National Cathedral project, following a High Court clearing him of contempt charges levelled by Reverend Kwesi Boateng.
Motivated by a series of developments, the attempt to gag us, we have our resolve strengthened, and the Ghanaian people can expect even a more determined and dogged effort.
And in spite of your pessimism, investors still prefer Ghana. President Akufo-Addo fires his critics as he commissions a Kia vehicle assembly plant with the capacity to produce 30,000 cars annually.
And in business, Finance Ministry and Bank of Ghana finally signs Memorandum of Understanding to stop government from borrowing from the central bank.
And in sports, Ghana's new 200-meter record holder James Darcy sets eyes on a 100-meter spot for the World Athletics Championship after qualifying for the 200-meter event in impressive style.
And much later, more than 70 Ghanaians touched down in Accra days after they were evacuated from war-torn Sudan. We'll hear from government on efforts to evacuate more citizens and also hear from some of the returnees who are concerned about reintegration. That and more in tonight's edition of News Now. You want to stay with us and join us with your comments and thoughts is via WhatsApp on 055 11 11997. Many thanks for choosing us. This is your home of independent, fearless and credible journalism. And this evening, the Forestry Commission says the quality of Ghana's vegetative cover has declined due to excessive degradation, including illegal mining activities. At least 34 out of more than 200 forest reserves have been identified as hotbeds for such activities. Illegal mining remains a major concern to many as water bodies and vegetation cover remain the worst hit by the menace. We can hear from the CEO of the Forestry Commission, John Alote, who has been speaking on the state of Ghana's forests at a news conference today.
To go into the details, we realize that the closed forest was 1.4 million in 2015. As we speak today, it has reduced to 1.2 million, whilst the open forest has increased from 4.3 million in 2015 through 6.5 million in 2019 to 6.6 million. What it means is that whilst the total size of the forest is increasing, the quality of the forest is reducing, which means that there are more open spaces. The canopy is reducing. What it also means is that we are getting more forest area that has gone through excessive degradation. What it means also is that if you have the forest, we are losing more of the content of the forest, but not the size of the forest. We can also see that bare surface has increased from 28,000 hectares in 2015 to 62,000 hectares in 2019 to 62.5 hectares in 2021. What is telling us that we're having more open spaces in Ghana now. It may also be a pointer to the fact that other land uses and then other impacts like Galamsey are opening up more bare surfaces.
Well, we also learned today from that press conference, according to the sector minister, Abu Jinapo, that there are actually now cartels operating in these forests, not only small-scale illegal miners or Galamsey miners. He says the state is now pursuing these cartels.
I do not, therefore, seek to justify the continuous degradation of our forests, but to let you appreciate the enormity of the problem we are dealing with and its attendant complexities. It is a historical challenge. We require a concerted and determined effort to clamp down on deforestation and the degradation of our nation's forests. And we will continue to do just that. At the heart of these various illegal enterprises, as you know, is money. And once we are dealing with money, you can be rest assured that the cartels operating in our forest reserves will find every means of outwitting our efforts. But let me assure you that the government of President Akufo-Addo remains absolutely determined to protect and preserve these resources for current and future generations. We will not relent. The fight against these illegal enterprises and the cartels in our forest reserves will not be an event, but a process. What is important is the commitment to protect and preserve these resources, which we are fully determined to do. We remain focused on this goal.
Well, the last 2 weeks has been dominated as far as the news headlines are concerned by the revelations in the Professor Frimpong Boateng report, the former Environment Minister. Well, today the Lands and Natural Resources Minister questioned the credibility of the contents in that particular report.
But always remember, ladies and gentlemen, that Professor Frimpong Boateng's report covers 2017 to 2021. It's a report of his stewardship, of his work. It's not a report of my stewardship from 2021 to date. So, with the greatest, I've heard people make the point that Frimpong Boateng's report shows we failed. Minister Jinapo has failed. Akufo-Addo has failed. He's not written a report about my stewardship. Reports cannot be sacrosanct. So even the report that the Forestry Commission CEO has just presented, as impressive as it is to me, and it appears it is impressive to some of you, take it from me, an hour from now, you will find civil society pundits critique it, as it should be. They will challenge the report that he's given, the figures, the analysis, the measures, the outcomes, and so on and so on. And that is how a democracy should function. And so a suggestion that Professor Frimpong Boateng's report is sacrosanct, is scripture, with the greatest of respect to the good old professor and to his report. I don't think that is how we have to look at it. It has to be interrogated, it has to be examined, and as I said, those parts of it we can take on board, we should. Those parts of it we should jettison, we should. But at the end of the day, what is important is that we remain focused and do the work of the good people of this country.
Well, so that's the Lands and Natural Resources Minister, Samuel Abu Jinapo there. And the Office of the Special Prosecutor has been issuing a statement on this. You've been talking about the Kwabena Frimpong Boateng report, which is still hot. And the statement today, basically, it's talking about illegal mining and says that on 10th October 2022, well, the Office of the Special Prosecutor published and it had commenced investigation into suspected corruption and corruption-related offences there. We'll get into it. And it also goes on to say the OSP acknowledges the recent calls for action and investigations into these matters by the public and civil society following the publication of a report on part of these matters authored by the former Minister for Environment, Science and Technology. So basically updates on investigations so far, the matters raised in the Kwabena Frimpong Boateng reports. They are speaking to the fact that they've already commenced investigations into some of the claims made by Professor Frimpong Boateng. We also know today that the Attorney General has also been issuing a statement speaking about investigations that they've conducted so far, raising concerns about the judicial process so far. We can go through some of the concerns also raised by the Attorney General, Godfred Yeboah-Dame.
I mean, he talks about the cases that they've looked at so far, a total of 119 criminal cases involving prosecution for about 720 individuals from offenses connected to illegal mining, and that's where the relevant portion is, and this is specifically with the Galamsey matter in the country. I mean, in the four regions, he's looking at the Eastern, Ashanti, Western, and Greater Accra regions, the main regions in which the prosecution of persons engaged in illegal mining is being conducted. The Upper East region, the northern regions as well, are places where he's been focusing. Now, if you look at the issues of the nationalities involved in the illegal mining problem that we have, it talks about Ghanaians, Chinese, Nigerians, Burkinabes, and other West African nationals are all involved in illegal mining. So we've been focusing quite a lot about the Chinese, but as the Attorney General is now talking about the people that he's now started prosecutions against, many of them are also from the SAP region, Nigerians, Burkinabes, and others. He says the main offenses that he's been using as an attempt to secure convictions, mining operations in Ghana, people operating in these mining areas without license and buying and selling minerals without license under the Minerals and Mining Act. Let's talk about the challenges that he's faced.
Well, for him, the grant of bail by the court to accused persons on very lenient conditions enables accused persons to easily meet them and abscond afterwards. So a number of the accused persons standing trial around the country have absconded after they were granted bail by the court. So the AG also says that the judiciary ought to cooperate in this fight against Galamsey by being cautious in the granting of such bails and speeding up of its processes to ensure swift prosecution and punishment of offenders. And interestingly also, he mentions that he describes as a lack of cooperation on the part of some of these witnesses as well. And the prosecution sometimes finds it difficult to secure witnesses who initially give statements at the investigation stage to come to court to testify. Now, the unwillingness to subsequently then testify is attributable, he says, to the fact that witnesses in Galamsey cases, they live in the same community with these accused persons, and they are often threatened and intimidated by them, so it makes it difficult for them to testify. Issues about some of the investigations they've done so far also came up, and he says that investigators fail to seize the illegal mining equipment used to commit the crime. And even when they do, they fail to bring the items to court, making it difficult to produce evidence.
Well, so there's a whole host of things that he's been talking about hindering the work to get to the safe, to get, succeed in prosecuting these individuals. And one of the criticism against the state is the state's inability to secure convictions against individuals, which is what he's been laying out. In a related development today, managers of the Owabi Wildlife Sanctuary in the Ashanti region are resisting the erection of a wall by the local chief, which they say is in violation of the government's buffer zone policy for that particular reserve. The chief of Owen, one staff of the facility arrested after they demolished a wall erected by him. But managers of the sanctuary say the action was necessary to ward off encroachers in protection of that particular reserve. Lab FM's Erasa Saridonko has been following this story and has more.
The Owabi Wildlife Sanctuary exists as a protected reserve to protect the dam, which serves 1/3 of Kumasi with water. Despite existing buffer zone policies, encroachers are eating deep into the reserve, aided in some cases by the traditional authorities. Chief Resident Guide Yakubu Noga tells Love News it has become a challenge protecting the sanctuary.
Layout 40 feet.
Per the layout, a buffer of 40 feet was kept between the reserve and any development around it to prevent encroachment. But because the chiefs want to make money, they are selling lands into the reserve and flouting these limitations. Now people are throwing refuse even into the reserve. That is our headache. The Owabi Wildlife Services claims the chief of Ohim, Nana Kusibaye, has ignored several warnings to desist from extending the wall of this building into the boundaries of the reserve. So, existing government buffer zone policy for water bodies and other areas says here that a minimum of 100 meters off watermark should be declared as protected areas. Where I'm standing right now is even within a 40-meter buffer zone that was declared by the chiefs themselves in this area. But it looks like that buffer zone has not been respected along the years. So we have encroachment all along the boundaries of the sanctuary. Now the recent one is this building belonging to assigns of the chief of this area have been able to eat deep into the boundaries here. Manager of the Owabi Wildlife Park, Patience Apasanaba, says allowing the development to stand will open doors for more encroachment.
So we have a lot of houses that has been built on the buffer. We are struggling with them to stop the new ones from springing up. So he being the chief and should know him better. He agreed 3 years ago that he was going to shift it back per our agreement that we were giving him some meters back so that it will not come so close to the reserve. But he breached that agreement that we came into. And at least we gave him that benefit of the doubt, inviting him for 3 good months. Oshim and our office is just a stone throw because our reserve is part of Oshim. He never came around. So 2 weeks ago, I asked the guys to go and pull down the wall because if we keep that going, it means it's going to spread to the others and then it will be a difficult fight for us to fight. This reserve protects a water body that supplies about 1/3 of Kumasi with water, including Oshim. So if he is not seeing this as an important reserve, we are here to make sure that the mandate of Forestry Commission is achieved.
Staff of the Wildlife Sanctuary, led by the manager, responded to a police invitation on Friday and were given sheets to write their statements. The chief of Ohim, Nana Kusibaye, confirmed to Love News he filed the complaint but will not speak on the issue of encroachment. Reporting for Joy News, Erastus Asaredonko, Oshim, Ashanti Region.
That's it, Erasa Sasari Donko there with that report. Now let's go on to some other stories. And an Accra High Court has declined to rule on the alleged dual identities of Secretary to the National Cathedral Board of Trustees, Reverend Kusi Boateng, saying the matter is under investigations. Well, this was in a contempt case filed by Reverend Kusi Boateng against MP for North Tongue, Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa. The MP was captured in viral videos, kicking some documents. I bet you recall that, Heavens. Well, lawyers for Mr. Ablakwa, however, described the set presentation of the documents as unconstitutional, citing parliamentary immunity. Well, this position was today upheld by the court. Legal Affairs correspondent Joseph Akable has more.
The Member of Parliament has been filmed in viral videos kicking some documents. Lawyers for Reverend Kusi Boateng say those were court documents regarding a defamation action he had filed against the legislator. The legislator's legal team pointed out that the person who had attempted to serve him with the court documents was not a staff of the Judicial Service. They also said the service was contrary to law since the MP enjoyed parliamentary immunity. The court presided over by Justice Charles Jemfi upheld these arguments, indicating further that the story was fraught with inconsistencies. Mr. Okujeto Ablakwa is excited about this decision and has indicated he will continue to speak about the cathedral project.
At this point, we cannot have people conduct themselves in ways that brings not only our country, but even the Christian faith into disrepute. Motivated by the series of developments, the attempt to gag us, we have our resolve strengthened, and the Ghanaian people can expect even a more determined and dogged effort to expose the rot, the canker, do what is right, and make sure that at the end of the day, it is the preservation of our democracy, the preservation of justice, of freedom and accountability that reigns supreme.
He's receiving some support from the party. Fifi Kwete is NDC General Secretary.
I mean, what he's doing is effectively doing on behalf not just of the party, on behalf of the people of Ghana. And for that, it's even more important. I mean, to do what it is, not simply because you are looking for partisan interest, but because you are pushing for something that actually makes the country better, a country that becomes sanitized. And so it really is a great crusade, and the party is absolutely proud of it. I'll continue to stand right by him. That's why I'm here representing the party, to simply let the country know that, listen, we will not allow any of our people who especially are doing what is right, to stand alone at all.
The substantive defamation case remains before the courts.
Well, Joseph Akable joins us on the telephone line right now. And Joseph, let's stay with this issue a while longer, because in addition to this victory for him in court today, there was also cost that was awarded against Reverend Kusi Boateng.
Yes, cost of 10,000 cedis. This was agreed upon by the lawyers for Reverend Kusi Boateng and lawyers for Mr. Okujeto Ablakwa, who had asked for the amount, indicating that this is a matter that they had been dragged to court and they had been forced to cough up legal fees, and so they deserve to be compensated of some sort. And so the court granted the 10,000 cedis cost.
And we'll find out pretty shortly if Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa has received that money. But let's stay with some of the other details that emerged in this particular case. We understand the court was presented with some evidence from the Ghana Revenue Authority on this alleged dual identities of Reverend Boateng. What did it say?
In fact, these were attachments that were part of the legal documents that Mr. Okujeto's lawyers made available to the court. The court said it initially did not want to comment on the matter, but it now still thinks that it needs to make take some notes of certain things that has been put before it. And so it indeed indicates that, yes, there are documents before it that shows that there is an individual with a particular name and another individual with a different name having a different date of birth and a different tax identification number, as evidence with documents from the Ghana Revenue Authority. The court said it appears as though there is some form of investigation, because it noted that under the Revenue Administration law, the Ghana Revenue Authority, the Commissioner General, is allowed to delete the registration of an individual if they realize that a person has multiple tax identification numbers. It's nonetheless asked the question that it remains whether the person who has brought this action in court is the same person who has the either name with a different date of birth and different mothers in terms of the name of mother on the documents attached to the tax identification number.
Well, stay with us, Joseph Akable. There's more we need to talk to you about. But let me bring in the North Tongue MP, Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa. We are grateful for your time here on Newsnight. First off, though, 10,000 cost awarded to you. Has that money been paid or process is still underway?
Well, good evening. I will want to believe that the processes are underway, but MFA, let me be clear that the emphasis would not be on cost or monetary gain. This has never been about monetary gain, and that's not money that's going to come to me. It is about justice. It is about accountability. Public funds are being expended without accounting to the people. Over $58 million have been taken out of our coffers without parliamentary approval. Ghana now hosts the most expensive pit, what looks like a galamsey site in the world. You've seen all the international articles, the scorn, the ridicule that we have been subjected to, all the demolitions that have taken place. As we speak, victims of those demolitions have not been compensated. Some are in court. Look at the state of our economy, how bankrupt we are, how insolvent we have become, debt distress, we cannot pay our debt, and yet hundreds of millions of dollars is going into a project that we estimate at the end of the day will cost the Ghanaian taxpayer over $1 billion. And it is not being done with candor, with sincerity. It's not being done above board with regard to our laws, to the Constitution of Ghana. Those are the substantive matters.
Okay.
And that is why we are determined to ensure that the canker, the rot is exposed. All the perpetrators, the culprits, are brought to book.
Well, I know you've been providing
eventually
some further details, Mr. Ablakwa, and these are substantive issues that we'll be getting into. But this is the first leg. Let me find out from you whether going to court today together with your lawyers, this was the outcome actually that you were expecting, or you were expecting more?
This is exactly the outcome we expected, and I must commend the judge, very erudite. It was a brilliant judgment. I'm sure that when certified true copies become available, the Ghanaian people will heap praises on this judge. Clearly, this was an abuse of the judicial process, all kinds of shenanigans just to gag me and to prevent me from carrying out my parliamentary oversight. The Ghanaian people, the people of Northton, voted for me to go to parliament to protect the public purse, to expose wrongdoing, and to make sure that parliamentary oversight is carried out without fear or favor. And we will not allow people to use all kinds of, abuse of the judicial process to gag us or to place impediments in our way. And I'm really impressed with this particular judge who kicked all those impediments out of my way. And I'm really pleased that I can continue with a series of exposés which I have been putting out.
Now, as lead crusader, undoubtedly, you've been providing some further details on your search regarding the registration status of the cathedral project in the USA. What exactly did you find?
Yes, I can confirm to you that I've just returned from the United States of America on a fact-finding mission. I got a good team of international collaborators who have been very helpful. And I can confirm to you, MFA, that a lot of the underhand dealings, the breach of laws, the opacity, and all the dubiousness that took place in Ghana, that same mindset, that same modus operandi is at play in the United States of America. The address that has been presented on the National Cathedral of Ghana website and which was presented to U.S. authorities, when we went to that Washington, D.C. address, the operators of the property, the managers of the property, told us that they don't have any National Cathedral of Ghana secretariat in that building. They have never operated there. It was clearly a fraudulent scheme. Then Carrie Summers, the American who was paid $6 million, he also had presented a particular address in Springfield, Missouri, where he says he operates his Nehemiah Group. We took the long journey to Springfield, Missouri, and to the shock of our lives, that address is a ramshackle, dilapidated, some shaky structure, a warehouse, which he's using for what he calls coffee wholesale. So is the name of the entity, or what is affixed to the rusted warehouse, is Churchill Coffee Company Wholesale Division. And I met him, clearly somebody who, you can't expect to be helping us build a $1 billion project. And further digging we have done, this man is using the same address, same personal address with Dr. Paul Opoku-Mensah. All the filing reports, the incorporation documents, Dr. Paul Opoku-Mensah is sharing the same address with this Kari Summers, which raises issues of insider dealing, sweetheart dealing. How is it that somebody you share the same personal address with comes to get Ghana's money, a whopping $6 million? And what is even more shocking is that a few weeks into Kari Summers receiving this $6 million, he buys a new house. I can confirm to you this evening, MFA, that this is only part one of a 5-part series. On Thursday, we will put out part 2, and you'll be even more shocked at what our compatriots have been up to in the United States of America.
What then do you intend to do with what you found? Because we've been trying to get the National Cathedral, but it's been unsuccessful so far. We're still trying. But as a legislator, with what you found, what are you going to do with it?
Yes, so you know that this is a pursuit for justice, a pursuit for accountability, a pursuit to protect the public purse. So there is a conflict of interest aspect which remains at Shraj. We've been cooperating with Shraj. We expect Shraj to rule soon. We have also filed a motion in Parliament for a full-scale inquiry. So all of these new revelations will help when this motion, which the Speaker has admitted, is debated and the committee is set up and we delve into the matters. But I would also want to make a passionate appeal that it shouldn't really be a one-man crusade or left to the NDC caucus in Parliament. What are our institutions, the OSP, the police, CID? You see, elsewhere, see what is happening in the United States of America. Even sitting presidents, former vice presidents, former presidents, you have the DOJ, you have the FBI. They are investigating. They are looking for, classified documents which they have taken home, and nobody is above the law. But in this country, it's like when your party is in power, when it is a government project, nobody comes after you. You can do whatever you want and get away with it. That has to stop. I want to see a country where nobody will be above the law, whether you are in power or not, whether you are close to those in power or even you wield power. Our institutions should be stronger than whoever. There should be real rule of law where all of us will be under the law. And so I'm quite disappointed that all of these array, litany of, institutions we have, who could have taken, look, if it was you, MFA, who some of these allegations, even just 2% of these allegations have been leveled against you from conflict of interest, inflationary pricing, breach of procurement laws, and fraud, and all of these scandalous matters, you would have been invited in no time. You will be behind bars already. But it appears we have two sets of laws, one for those who are vulnerable, those who are in opposition, and then another set for those who are in power or have good proximity with those in power. We cannot build a society that way. We cannot defeat corruption if we continue with this kind of structured.
Well, we'll leave it here for now, Mr. Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, and look forward to the next leg of this. But Joseph is still with us on other related matters when it comes to issues from the judiciary. And Office of the Attorney General has asked the High Court to impose custodial sentence on founder of defunct Capital Bank, William Atuisian. Joseph Akable, please provide us with further details on this particular issue.
So you recall that in 2022, just when the court was on the verge of delivering its judgment in the case in which Mr. Essien is charged with stealing money laundering, amongst others, Mr. Essien's lawyers informed the court that they had entered into an agreement with the Attorney General's office to refund an amount of 90 million cedis. The 90 million cedis, you recall, they did indicate by the agreement that they were going to pay 30 million cedis upfront and pay the outstanding 60 million cedis in 3 installments. The first installment was to be paid latest by 28th April 2023. And MFA portions of the court judgment, let me read specifically what the court said. It says, I order that if the convict defaults in the first payment of the amount of 20 million cedis or makes payment short of that amount by the 28th of April 2023, the whole of the amount of 60 million cedis shall become due and payable by the convict. Upon failure to pay the terms of the agreement entered into and adopted by the court with its further conditions imposed by this court will be deemed to have come to an end. In that event, prosecution shall immediately cause the apprehension of the convict and produce him before court as soon as practicable for custodial sentence to be passed on him according to law. And so it is upon this basis that the AG has initiated this particular action, saying that he has missed the first installment payment.
So as it stands now, has the court decided what the sanctions will be, although they've specified EC going to jail? Do you have clarity on that?
I mean, they would have to move this particular application, but in terms of getting a sense of what we are looking at, we know that the offenses that he was charged with is stealing and money laundering, and stealing per section 124 of Act 29, the Criminal and Other Offences Act, a second-degree felony that carries a maximum sentence of 25 years. So anything up until 25 years. Again, the issues of money laundering, we know that under Act 749, that is specifically Section 3, a person who contravenes Section 1 or 2 commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of not more than 5,000 penalty units or to a term of imprisonment of not less than 12 months and not more than 10 years or to both. And so that is the offense for which he was convicted of, that is stealing, multiple counts of stealing, and also the issues of money laundering. But this application will be moved, we understand, sometime next week, and the AG will be making a strong case for custodial sentence to be imposed in line with the court's own directives of what should happen when the first installment is missed. And the AG has checked with the Controller and Accountant General. They wrote the letter on 28 April and got a response this morning, which indicated that payment has not been made, leading to the filing of this action this afternoon.
In other words, if the Attorney General gets his way, the founder of the defunct Capital Bank, William Atuisian, will be behind bars if they get their way.
Also.
Joseph, thank you very much. And the woes of the founder of the defunct Capital Bank, William Atuisian, are not ending any time soon. We keep a close eye on the story and bring you further details as and when we get it. And just before George comes in, there's a lot of speculation in the last few weeks about who becomes the next Chief Justice. Well, you don't have to speculate anymore, because today Parliament has formally been informed of the President's decision to nominate Justice Gertrude Torkornoo as Ghana's next Chief Justice. Now, the Justice, Kwesi Nyeabua, is set to retire later this month, and the President is asking Parliament to expedite action.
Chief Justice Kwesi Nyeabua is due to retire from the bench on 24th May 2023. In order to avoid a vacuum in the office of the Chief Justice following his retirement, I have decided to initiate the process for the appointment of his successor. Pursuant to Article 1441 of the Constitution, I consulted with the Council of State on my nominee, Justice Gertrude Araba Isaba Saki Torkornoo, Justice of the Supreme Court. Thus, in accordance with Article 1441 of the Constitution, I write to inform you that I've nominated Justice Gertrude Araba Isaba Saki Tokonu for approval by Parliament as the next Chief Justice. I'm fully satisfied that Justice Tokonu is duly qualified and eminently fit to occupy the office of Chief Justice. Mr. Speaker, it is my respectful hope that the approval by Parliament of Justice Tokonu can proceed expeditiously to enable her assume office as soon as practicable. Honourable members, the nomination is hereby referred to the Appointments Committee for consideration and report.
Well, the members of the minority in Parliament say they are not opposed to her nomination in principle, but they are asking her not to be partisan when she gets on the bench. Listen to MP for Laura Bedzadeh and Kita MP Kwame Gakbe.
I think it is within the right of the President of the Republic to make a nomination of a Chief Justice when a vacancy occurs. So it is not the first time that this has been done. And normally, the nomination comes from a Justice of the Supreme Court, even though the nomination could also be outside the Justices of the Supreme Court. But in this case, it is somebody who is already on the Supreme Court. And I think that I've known Justice Tokonu. I've known her. In fact, I can say that she's my classmate. In fact, we entered the Faculty of Law together, and then we entered the law school together, and we were called to the bar same day, same year. Other colleagues who were also called to the bar and who joined the bench, they have also been elevated variously, and others are currently also in the Court of Appeal, and others are at the High Court. So it's not out of place. She is coming as the third female justice, Chief Justice, and it is refreshing. Well, for what I know about her, so far she has not been indicted. And but let us see what happens.
Oh, the new Chief Justice, well, it's good, but she's a female. You need to actually support female. But there is the age, that is my issue. You will be there up to about, is it 10 years? Yeah, 10 years to be there. So, well, we just pray that during his administration, it should be fair.
So that's a concern of the minority in Parliament. And George is joining us with details from the world of business. Hello, George.
Hi, Evans. And the Finance Ministry and Bank of Ghana signs Memorandum of Understanding to stop government borrowing from the Central Bank. And Economist Intelligence Unit project monetary policy rate will go up further to hit a little over 31% by the end of this year. The business news on Newsnight is brought to you by MTN Business. Welcome to the new world of business. And MTN wishes to inform all its valued customers to re-register their SIM cards as directed by the regulator, that is the National Communications Authority. All unregistered phone numbers will be disconnected permanently by 31st of May 2023. Complete your registration at any MTN service center to avoid disconnection permanently and stay connected everywhere you go. Right back after this break.
Isn't life wonderful when everything worth doing is scheduled? Hitting the stop button on your alarm just in time for your morning jog. That's happy moments listening to your baby's heartbeat at the doctor's office. Or an arranged virtual meeting with that big client.
Buy airtime ahead of time with scheduled airtime service on MTN Momo. You can schedule your airtime purchase of any amount daily, weekly, or monthly by dialing *170# option 3 and follow the process. Or simply dial *170*311# for a superb airtime purchase experience. You enjoy 100% bonus airtime anytime you recharge yourself with MTN Momo. Keep on talking with that 100% feeling. So, what are we doing today?
MTN.
Son, we are so proud of you for setting up this hospital. I really love those hospital beds and waiting chairs. By the way, did you import them?
No, Dad, I didn't. I actually got them from Kindle Books and Stationery right here in Ghana.
Wow. We also bought our office supplies, safes, executive desks and chairs from Kingdom, and they gave us expert advice on how to set up our office.
Guys, that makes 3 of us. I also got our sofa and bedroom sets, plus our dining hall furniture for our new home from Kingdom.
Wow, Mom, that makes 4 of us. I usually get my stationery items from Kingdom, and my teacher also mentioned that our classroom furniture was provided by Kingdom.
So there you have it. Whenever you're thinking about setting up an office or acquiring furniture for your home, etc., Kingdom Books and Stationery should be your first point of call. With over 40 years experience in the industry, we stock and supply a wide variety of globally sourced office and home furniture, stationery and equipment. Visit our head office, Osu Akwaje, or our office near the Osu Stadium. We're also in Tema Community 1, opposite Olam SHF, Kumasi KNUST campus, UCC Cape Coast, and now at the Marina Mall, Airport City. Or call us 0302 764101, 764209, or 762792. Visit our website www.kingdomgh.com.
Do you know Flamingo Paint has superior properties than any other paint brand on the market? Listen, when you take 1 bucket of Flamingo Paint, it's equal to several buckets of any paint brand on the market. So, Flamingo has superior hiding properties, superior coverage, it means it covers, and superior durability. Flamingo Paint, superior hiding. Flamingo Paint, superior coverage. Flamingo Paint, superior durability. Flamingo Paint, simply superior.
You're welcome back to Business on Newsnight. Now, the Finance Ministry and the Bank of Ghana signed a memorandum of understanding on zero financing of government's budget. There is more in the following Business Desk report.
Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Addison. This should mean that there is now some understanding in the document that will guide the Bank of Ghana when it comes to lending to the Ministry of Finance. Bank of Ghana can use this document to reject lending to the Ministry of Finance when it comes to financing some projects in the budget for this year and 2024. The move is part of conditions that should be met before Ghana's program with the IMF can be approved by the Executive Board of the IMF by the end of this month for its program to be approved. The Bank of Ghana is said to have financed government budget for last year by almost 38 billion Ghana cedis. The central bank had argued that it had to do this to help save the economy from crashing, especially when it comes to paying maturing bonds. However, former Minority Leader Haruna Ijusu has maintained that the Memorandum of Understanding cannot be said to be completed until it's brought to Parliament for approval to give that legal binding so that someone can be punished when there is a breach of the law. Some analysts are, however, worried about the impact of this move on government finances, as it could come with some shocks for the economy going forward.
And that was the Business Desk report. Now, this zero financing was signed between the Finance Ministry and the Bank of Ghana. That is last week. Meanwhile, the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, has maintained that this zero financing deal is one of the surest ways to check the perennial high budget deficit. He maintained that government's commitment to stick to this deal.
So there will be no kind of deficit financing of that nature. So we need to work within our box, and within that box we are going to be working.
Are you really prepared for the MOU? Someone saying that for an economy like Ghana, there are proponents, there are some who are against it, saying that, listen, there should be a level of 5%, 10%, having a strict MOU, zero financing. Are you ready for that or not?
That's in the Constitution, the 5-10% or so.
And that is Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. Now, London-based Economics Intelligence Unit is projecting that the monetary policy rate will go up further from its current rate before the end of this year. Now, the unit is forecasting that it will reach 31.5% by December 2023. There is more in this report.
The monetary policy rate currently stands at 29.5% after it was reviewed in March this year by some 150 basis points. However, the research and intelligence wing of the Economist Group, based in London, is projecting that we should expect another 100 basis point increase at the next meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana. This should take the rate about 31.5% by the end of this year. This should help in bringing inflation rates down to hit Bank of Ghana's target by the end of 2023. The unit in the report noted that the policy rate will be held steady next year as inflation rate slows. However, we should expect what they call policy loosening to start from the second half of 2025. For some, this should come as good news for a lot of businesses that have complained how these recent hikes had impacted badly on their operations and how that might go a long way, turn things around for most enterprises.
And that is a Business Desk report. Now, Rana Motors, one of the leading automobile dealers in Ghana, says it plans to leverage on the incentives offered by government to expand its operations in the country. Now, that is Kasim Odemat, is the Chief Operating Officer of Rana Motors, and he has been speaking to Joy Business at the commissioning of one of the largest state-of-the-art vehicle assembling plant at Amasaman in the Gawes municipality of the Greater Accra region.
This makes it competitive with the other vehicles which are imported, and also in the future, once the full implementation of the policy will be in place, also it will make it more and more attractive. Also with the schemes that was mentioned, that there will be financial schemes in place set by the government and different institutions to make also like very low interest rate. Everybody who wants to take a loan to buy a vehicle, most importantly a vehicle assembled in Ghana. Whatever you see outside of Ghana, made in Korea and made in other places in the world, it is the same quality and the same standards. Actually, at the end of the day, Kia has came to give the training to our people and to our engineers, and also made sure that we have passed all the levels of certifications for us to be able to assemble vehicles over here.
Kasim Odemat is the Chief Operating Officer of Rana Motors Ghana. Two other stories: the Youth and Employment Agency has pledged its commitment to reduce unemployment rate by creating jobs. According to the Chief Executive Kofi Ejiapong, the agency has created over 25,000 jobs over the past 9 years and will continue to partner with various private sector institutions to create sustainable employment for the youth. He's been speaking at the official launch of training and employment of insurance agents under the Youth Employment Agency.
Since the last 9 months, 25,000 sustainable jobs. And in partnership with the private sector, also we have about 60,000 also there. So we are trying our best to create jobs. That is the mandate of the YE, to facilitate, coordinate, and supervise the creation of jobs in the country. We see that this place, they need people to work to. YE goes there and create that opportunity for the Ghanaian youth to be employed.
Kofi Ejiapong is the Chief Executive of the Youth Employment Agency. To the stock market, MTN was down by a peso to close at 1 Ghana cedi 25 peso. And despite the challenging results released by some of the commercial banks, it is yet to impact their share price on the Ghana Stock Exchange. And that's all for business on Newsnight. Some people who actually invested in who actually didn't sign up for the domestic direction program have had their payments being made to them, and they are very happy. I mean,
we'll speak to some of them, right? You would want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, by way of update, the Senior Hossi and his group, the Individual Bondholders Forum, they've been part of the technical committee, whereas the others say they will not participate. They've been negotiating. Senior Hossi last week Friday said on Top Story that payments will be made this week, or I think over the weekend, and we can confirm that in the last 24 hours.
You can confirm, right?
Many of the individual
have had the payments being made in their bank accounts.
And Senior kept his word. He was.
But his government was paying Senior.
Well, I mean, this is a result of the technical committee's report, the technical committee meetings that they've been having, and so of course many are confirming that.
You know anyone who has received?
Oh, a lot of them. Yeah.
Wait, I'm asking about.
Okay. As for this, it's something that we've confirmed in the last few minutes that many have received their bonds.
Yeah,
so listen to News Night on Joy 99.7 FM. Let's go to the election headquarters now. And this is your election headquarters. And we continue our build up towards the NDC primaries next week, Saturday. We shine a light on the Ningo Pram constituency, where incumbent MP Sam George is preparing for a battle of his life. A former constituency chairman, Michael Tekwete, is gaining grounds, vowing to unseat Mr. George. Kwaku Asante looks ahead to what will be a contentious primary.
Sam George is coming up against a very resourceful Michael Tekwete, who was once chairman of the constituency. Sam George is framing this election on experience, as he says his opponent does not have what it takes to beat the NPP to retain the Ningo Pram seat for the NDC.
Say follow who know, Mambi. We are choosing experience over experiment. Chapin na menake akaye dabi wakenena peko ye ne walele na enya experiment somishe loloji na gana bi wape na munayo epe nsoshe wawo wakale TV na wawo black and white.
His opponent, meanwhile, a media-shy Michael Tekwete, is slowly warming up to delegates in the constituency, as was evident in the cheers he received when John Mahama visited the constituency.
We have Honorable Samuel Nate Data George as one of the aspirants. Thank you. Your Excellency, again, we also have Michael Tekwete, one of the aspirants. Thank you.
With just 2 weeks to this election, some branch executives in the constituency, numbering about 54, say despite having been elected, they are yet to be sworn in, alleging this is a ploy to favor a specific candidate.
We are here because, as every 4 years, we have to, as NDC executives, everybody has to go through vetting, and when we are through, we have to go for an election. And some of these branches, there are 6 branches that they have to contest. And some of them went through vetting and they are unopposed. That is 2 branches. And the other 4 branches have to be going through election. But all of a sudden, the council executives and some of the people said they have been disqualified, which we don't even understand the reason why. From here, we are waiting for National to make sure they reinstate that branches. That's the reason why we are waiting for them to call us.
Oh, we are just here to get things done properly so that we have peace, to have the understanding, to continue to work for NDC to win power 2024.
We are throwing challenge to them to know that they should refer that 6 branches back to work for us so that we can go and win our victory. Without that 6 branch, I don't think that voting on the 13th will come on. We are not going to allow that.
The Ningo Pram seat is one of the safest NDC seats in the Greater Accra region. The party has won it every single election since it was created in 1996. And that is what makes the party primaries even cagey, because both candidates are aware there will be one step in parliament if they win their primaries. With both candidates determined to defeat the other, and with some party delegates accusing the party of scheming to favor one candidate over the other, the Ningo Pram primary will be one of the most keenly contested and one that could potentially bring up massive political shocks. For Joy News, Kwaku Asante.
We can do sports now from the election headquarters. This is also your sports headquarters. And Ms. Bao wouldn't doubt that, Ms. Bao, would you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely not. Well, it's Ghana's new 200-meter record holder, James Dadzie, who is eyeing securing a 100-meter berth at Budapest for the World Athletics Championship. Now, Dadzie qualified for the 200-meter event with a world-leading 19.79 seconds run at the Corky Crowfoot shootout. Now, despite his excitement, Dadzie told Joy Sports he did not believe he had really posted the time after beating up and coming sensation is Asinga. We saw him become the 3rd fastest collegiate athlete over 200 meters.
Well, it's been really great. Like, I feel very happy. Though I don't believe I actually ran that time, but I feel really great booking my spot to World Championship. Because prior to that meet, I told my coach that, sir, look, this is the only chance I got. I'm going to take on the double, no matter what it takes. I don't know what might work out for me. And I went there, I hit the 100, and then I really felt bad when the win was up by 3.2. Then he was like, do you still want to take the 200? I said, like, yes. I don't know what might happen. I might get a legal win and then book my spot. He said, okay, let's go get a job done. And then it went very well. And then he was surprised. And then we're all amazed that it came to pass, that the idea that I brought up really helped. And then now I've booked my spot. Everything is possible. When we get to the track, we do what we do at practice. That is all.
There. And even, of course, in a few minutes' time, Arsenal will be taking on Chelsea at the Emirates Stadium. And Mikel Arteta has a very interesting comment ahead of the game. He says the title race is not over. Evans.
It is over.
It is over.
It is over.
It's over.
It is over.
You know, and he says it's not over. Anyway.
Well, thank you very much, MF.
Well, President Akufo-Addo says despite the pessimism by persons he describes as naysayers, Ghana is the preferred destination for investment. The president this morning commissioned an assembly plan for Rana Motors to produce Kia vehicles and trucks locally. So we know Peugeot is here, Kia is here, we're told Honda is also coming. How come I still don't have any of them? But the plant with the capacity to produce 30,000 vehicles will serve the West African market. Opening the facility, the president said Ghana continues to attract the attention of investors due to the business-friendly policies adopted by government.
The automotive industry is one of 10 strategic anchor industrial sectors identified by government as growth poles for our nation's industrial transformation. Against all odds and the pessimism expressed by some naysayers, we continue to attract investment into the development of an automotive industry in Ghana, with our country's automotive policy receiving rave reviews across the continent and the world. Today we are witnessing what will go down in history as another giant step towards Ghana's quest to establish herself as a regional hub for the automotive industry in sub-Saharan Africa. Rana Motors, with support from Kia Motors Corporation of Korea, the manufacturer of Kia vehicles, and one of the leading global vehicle manufacturers, has successfully established the only assembly plant for the production of Kia vehicles in West Africa.
And Evans, you know the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is in town, and he also announced that Honda is about to set up this year as well. But let's do some other stories. I'll take you to the airport, and more than 70 Ghanaians have arrived safely in Accra after fleeing the war-torn country of Sudan. The group had to journey for 3 days from Sudan to neighboring Ethiopia before finally reaching the safety of the Ghanaian embassy there. Well, the conflict in Sudan we know began on April 15, sparked by that power struggle there. We can hear from the Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister, Mr. Amprechum, when he received these Sudanese Ghanaians who arrived from Sudan.
Students are over there. There are 74 of them who arrived. Originally, the number was supposed to have been 75 students, but one of them decided that he was not going to come home. And our position was that it wasn't compulsory to force anybody against his or her will to travel from Addis Ababa to Ghana. What the government plan was to get the Ghanaians or Ghanaian nationals from the terrible situation that they found themselves in, where two armed groups.
And we can listen later to the students who arrived from Sudan, escaping the violence and the conflict there. A lot also on myjoyonline.com. And that's it for News Night tonight. My name is Evans Mensah.
I am Emefa Apau. The geeks are up next, and Spiky is here. What are we talking about tonight?
We're talking about the whole hula baloo about checking the SIM cards that are linked to your Ghana card.
Okay.
We'll be trying to explain.
And the numbers that are popping up.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
There's that too.
I'll stay for that because I need to know more about it.